Today I want to talk about ignorance. It's been on my mind a lot lately, and so I wanted to unpack it here. Warning, this might be a long one. Ironically, as we entered the information age, a weird phenomenon started to happen. The entirety of human knowledge sat in a device the size of a pack of cards, and yet we are some of the most ignorant people on the planet. Social media weaponized narcissism, ensuring that we'd be so busy taking pictures of our own butts or giving our useless regurgitated takes on foreign policy in Syria, or putting black squares on Instagram to let people know we're not a racist, that we completely missed the obvious attacks on our privacy, our security, and our liberties until it was too late. The lure was connectivity. The lure was sharing pictures with your friends. The lure was catching up with old friends from high school. The lure was staying up to date with the news. But the hook is screen addiction for kids. The hook is big tech shoving propaganda down your throat, or removing you because you're a threat. The hook is election interference by the media through the suppression of relevant stories and the magnification of distractions in their place. The hook is everyone being massively politicized. The hook is a country that's crippled by something as simple as COVID. The hook is the death of this great nation. We're like a frog, being slowly boiled alive without noticing, being only distracted by our love for ourselves. "Man, I look good," the frog said, as he gradually loses consciousness. The lure is the appeal to narcissism. It's pandering to our inflated sense of self-importance, keeping us distracted from what's actually going on. And the end result of all this entertainment is that more people know the names of the Simpsons characters than they do the names of Supreme Court justices. How many people know about the real issues? I'm not talking about racism or homophobia. Those are distractions meant to keep you split up while the government and big tech works hard behind the scenes to screw you. How many people know about AT&T giving the government access to all the phone calls ever placed on their lines since 1987? How many know about Stellar Winds or PRISM? How many people are awake to how the government uses emergencies to take our freedoms? 20 years after 9/11 and we're still taking off our shoes at the airport. I used to say that the terrorists won, but they didn't win. The government won. And after January 6th, they'll be censoring language that incites violence forever, whatever they decide that to be. Forget politics. How many people believe chocolate milk comes from brown-colored cows? Like 10%. That's the same amount of people who are left-handed. We've all been lulled to sleep on the stuff that matters. And in true Orwellian fashion, we've been trained to be dumb by the Department of Education in order to fall for the government-approved beliefs in the first place. It's how we end up with the leaders we do. It's why Cardi B has to be the one to interview Joe Biden. It's how being woke actually means being the most asleep and licking the Kool-Aid bowl clean. You really have to hand it to the government. The thing they're afraid of more than anything is a well-educated populace. And it's ingenious. They use the very devices that could educate us all to keep us dumb as rocks while they get away with everything. Jordan Peterson outlined some of the importance of being a well-informed citizen and what exactly that means in one of his lectures.
There's this idea in the New Testament that Christ was he who took the sins of the world unto himself. It's a very complicated idea, but part of it is associated with the idea that he met the devil in the desert as well. To take the sins of mankind onto yourself is to understand that within you dwells exactly the same spirit that commit the atrocities at Columbine or that ran the camps at Auschwitz, and to actually understand that that's part and parcel of your makeup, and then to take responsibility for it. And I think that in the aftermath of the terrible 20th century, that's what we're left with. We're left with the necessity to take responsibility for the most terrible aspects of ourselves. And that way, perhaps we can stop those terrible things from happening again. That's all. And that also means, that you don't look for the, what would you call it? The purveyor of malevolence outside yourself, right? It isn't someone else, even though sometimes it's someone else. You know what I mean? It's like there are identifiable perpetrators, but that's not precisely the point. The point is something more like that the proper place for the encapsulation of that malevolence, at least the proper place to start, is within the confines of your own existence, and then perhaps within the confines of your family. And that way you're not a danger to those that you misapprehend as malevolent and evil, because you won't get your aim right to begin with. You'll identify them improperly, and you'll take your revenge in a manner that allows you to omit your own responsibility, to act out your unconscious desire for revenge, and to move the world just that much closer to hell.
As much as it's our responsibility as citizens to go out and vote, it's equally our responsibility to be aware of the factors and signs and types of leaders that would lead this nation into being like the nations that killed 100 million people last century. Because that's in us. We have that ability. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And like Jordan Peterson also has said, even if you, as a good person, were to set up a perfect socialist system, you would quickly be taken out by less honorable people who would then abuse the system and create misery for everyone. It's the ignorance of this that's created the world we live in now. It's the ignorance of not realizing the magnitude of the forces that they're playing with, or what it leads to. It's the ignorance of history, of human nature, combined with the narcissism that those forces would never affect them like it has every other group of well-intentioned people who ended up committing atrocities. It's the ignorance of not knowing that German soldiers were just people who believed in bad ideologies for decades. It's the ignorance that simplifies people in history to just being superstitious natives or backwater hicks, or the bad guys in Marvel movies, rather than realizing we're all the same people in the same boat they were, making the exact same mistakes in exactly the same way. It's the ignorance of completely rendering the older, wiser generation obsolete. Who needs their wisdom? Our world is catered to childish fantasies. We look to children for our advice, while being blind to the fact that children are stupid as hell and should be ignored. And now that we're all children, Daddy Government swoops in to protect us from the dangerous beliefs. This is why the system fights like hell to have those ideas suppressed as much as they can get away with. It's why they cheer when people like Rush Limbaugh passes away. Anyone who's saying the truth is labeled with every slur in the book and celebrated when they die. We're basically in a cult. Cults restrict your access to certain information that would cause you to disbelieve. It's imposed ignorance. I'm not sure how diverse the library was at the Heaven's Gate complex, but I'll go out on a limb and say they left some pretty important stuff out. And that was on purpose. You can't believe radical ideas without separating yourself from information that contradicts the message. Otherwise, doubt would creep in. And that's what the government and big tech is doing now. Alex Jones had to be removed. Milo Yiannopoulos had to be removed. Trump has to be removed. Dangerous subjects have to be banned off YouTube. Things are labeled too sensitive for you, a grown adult, to see for yourself. It's all in an effort to separate you, the believer, from the truth of things. And sadly, the majority of people have fallen for this. They are true believers in some sense. They are happily believing in dangerous ideas that will lead to harm in the future. If there's one thing you should take away from this video, it's this. Well-educated people are the enemy of the state, the enemy of propaganda. I also want to make clear that I'm not suggesting that this is done by the Illuminati, or it's the Jews, or some secret elite group of blood-drinking Satan worshippers who run child sex rings out of a pizza store basement. Rather, I do take the Founding Father approach that big government seem to develop into this over time as they get bigger. It's a natural phenomenon. That's the cost of widespread ignorance. It's a worldwide shift towards hell. That's what Orwell got so right, and that's what makes his work so genius. He nailed exactly how people behave and how the state runs things once it's totalitarian. So when you see these people out here touting the benefits of socialism or communism or Marxism, just know that they've bit the lure and are completely unaware of the hook in their mouth. It's ignorance, plain and simple. It's why people who have come from socialist and communist countries marvel at how we in America could even entertain these ideas. is because they've felt the hook. They took that trip up to the surface, and they have the hole in their cheek to show it. We should probably listen to them. That's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this type of content, consider giving this video a like and maybe subscribing. I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.